Icarus, the labyrinth, and the dream of the sky. The sun had barely risen over the island of Crete when Daedalus, the greatest craftsman of his age, stood at the mouth of his creation, the labyrinth. It sprawled beneath the palace of King Minos like a living maze of stone, winding deeper and deeper into the earth. It was both a wonder and a prison, a place where genius and horror walked hand in hand. Daedalus had built it to contain the Minotaur, a monstrous child of both man and bull, born of a curse from the gods. Yet as the years passed, he began to see that the labyrinth was more than just walls and passages. It was a symbol of human ambition, a monument to pride that could never find its way back to innocence. And somewhere deep inside that maze, another kind of prisoner lived, Daedalus himself. The king, fearing that the secrets of the labyrinth might spread beyond his control, had locked Daedalus and his young son Icarus in a tall tower overlooking the Aegean Sea. From their window, they could see the world stretch endlessly, the white cliffs of Crete, the blue horizon, the goals that soared where no man could reach. Every morning, Icarus would press his hands against the cold stone and watch the birds glide across the sky. "Father," he would whisper, "why can't we fly like them?" Daedalus would smile faintly but say nothing. His hands were always busy, shaping, binding, building, as if the act of creation itself could keep despair away. Because he finally said one day, "We are men, not gods." The sky was not meant for us, but Icarus, barely 16, with golden hair and eyes that held more sky than earth, refused to believe that. The world to him was not a cage, but a promise. Days turned into weeks, and the father's mind worked ceaselessly. He studied the gulls, the wind, the way feathers curved and lifted. He gathered twigs, threads, and beeswax smuggled from the palace workshops. Piece by piece, a miracle began to take shape. When the wings were finally done, they gleamed softly in the morning light. Two great arcs of feathers bound with wax, crafted with the precision of a god and the love of a father. "Icarus," Daedalus said, his voice trembling, "the king has given us walls, but not even Minos can command the wind. Today we will leave this island behind." The boy's heart raced. He touched the wings with reverence, unable to speak. For the first time, he felt that the impossible might truly belong to him. They climbed to the top of the tower where the air smelled of salt and freedom. The sea below shimmered like a vast mirror, endless and waiting. Daedalus fastened the wings to his son's shoulders, his hands shaking. "Listen carefully," he said. "Keep to the middle path. Do not fly too low, or the sea spray will dampen the feathers. But do not fly too high, or the sun will melt the wax. Follow me, and you will be safe." Icarus nodded, though his eyes were already on the sky. Daedalus spread his wings first. A gust lifted him, and for a moment he faltered, then rose. The air caught him like a whisper, carrying him higher until he was no longer a prisoner of stone, but a part of the wind itself. Then came Icarus. He leapt. For a heartbeat he fell, and then with the next gust the wings caught him. His laughter echoed over the cliffs. "Father, I can fly." Daedalus turned back, tears in his eyes. "Yes, my son." "You can?" They soared over the island, over the labyrinth that had once bound them, over the kingdom that had feared their minds. Below them, the waves stretched like fields of blue flame, and above them the sun burned gold. For a moment, there was no past, no prison, no warning, only the endless sky and the wild joy of flight. Daedalus, steady and cautious, kept to the middle course. But Icarus, young, daring, and full of light, began to climb, higher, ever higher. He felt the wind roar against his face, the rush of power in every beat of his wings. The sea became a distant shimmer below, and the clouds parted before him. "I am not a prisoner," he thought. "I am the son of the sun." He could almost touch the heavens, and somewhere far above the gods watched. The fire of the sun, the sky opened before them like a living ocean, boundless, glittering, full of promise. The wind carried them farther from Crete, farther from the island that had once been both home and prison. Beneath them, the waves shimmered like molten silver, each crest a spark of freedom. Daedalus flew ahead, his strokes measured, his eyes always darting back to his son. He had dreamed of this moment for years, the escape, the impossible turned real. Yet even in that triumph, he felt a tremor of fear. Freedom, he knew, was a dangerous thing. For Icarus, however, there was no fear, only wonder. The air, cool and thin, rushed past his face, lifting his hair and filling his lungs with a joy too vast to contain. He laughed, a sound bright and unguarded, echoing through the open sky. "Father," he called, "look at me." Daedalus turned, smiling faintly, though the wind carried away his words. He wanted to tell Icarus to stay close, to remember the warnings, but his voice was lost amid the roar of air and sea. Icarus was already climbing. He had seen the sun rise 1,000 times from the tower on Crete, always far away, always unreachable. But now, with wings of his own, it no longer seemed a distant god. It was near, warm, golden, alive, and he too was a creature of light. The world below faded into mist. The sea became a faint blue blur. The cries of gulls grew thin and distant. Up here it was silent, a silence so pure it felt sacred. Icarus beat his wings harder, faster, soaring through the air like a star reborn. The light drenched his face, and for the first time in his life, he felt as though he belonged not to the earth, but to the heavens. "I was meant for this," he whispered to himself. He looked down and saw his father, a small figure now, moving steadily, cautiously, like a shadow crawling along the wind. "Why do you fear the sky, father?" he thought. "Why hold to caution when the gods themselves have wings?" And higher he climbed. The air grew thin. The wind changed, no longer cool but warm, almost burning. The feathers at the edge of his wings trembled as if in warning. Still, Icarus did not stop. He spread his arms wide and closed his eyes. The sunlight wrapped around him, blazing gold across his skin. For a fleeting moment, he felt the universe open, vast and infinite. He felt himself part of it all, the sky, the stars, the fire of the sun. He was no longer just a boy. He was a symbol of everything humanity could become: freedom, courage, defiance. It was intoxicating. Far below, Daedalus sensed it, that dangerous shift in the air, the thinness of the wind. He looked up and saw his son, a glowing speck rising into the light. "Icarus," he cried, "come down. The air grows too warm, your wings won't hold." But the sky swallowed his voice. Icarus heard only the rhythm of his own heartbeat, the rush of air, the whisper of destiny in his ears. "Just a little higher," he murmured. "Just a little closer." The sun loomed ahead, not just a light, but a living fire. He could feel its heat on his skin, the wax softening beneath the feathers. The smell of melting honey filled the air. He blinked against the brightness, his eyes watering. Still he smiled. "I am not afraid," he said. Then came the first crack. A feather loosened, drifted away, then another. And another. He didn't notice at first. He was too lost in the brilliance. But when he spread his wings again, something felt different, lighter, weaker. The air no longer lifted him as before. The sun, once golden and glorious, now burned white, harsh, consuming. The wax dripped down his arms like tears of fire. "Father," he whispered, suddenly unsure. The heat seared his shoulders. He flapped harder, desperate now. The feathers tore away in clusters, spinning down through the air like snow. The sky, once his ally, turned against him. Below, Daedalus saw it all, the feathers falling, the shape of his son twisting in panic. "No, no, Icarus," he screamed. His voice broke like glass. "Not higher, down, down." But it was too late. The wings that had carried Icarus toward the gods were now nothing more than rags of melting wax. His arms thrashed wildly, trying to catch the wind that no longer wanted him. And in that final, blazing instant, he realized what he had done. The dream of freedom had turned to fire. The boy fell. At first, the air caught him, a long, trembling silence. Then gravity claimed its due. He tumbled through the clouds, through the sunlight, through the thin blue veil of heaven. The wind screamed in his ears, and the world spun in dizzying motion. He saw flashes, his father's face, the sea far below, the white cliffs of Crete, and above all, the cruel, beautiful sun, now cold and distant again. "Father," he whispered as the air rushed past. "I flew too high. The last of the feathers tore free." The wings came apart completely, scattering like the ashes of a star. Daedalus dove after him, his wings straining, his heart breaking with every beat. He caught sight of Icarus once more, a figure falling, surrounded by a storm of feathers glowing in the sunlight like gold dust. The boy struck the sea with a sound that echoed across the waves, soft, final, and eternal. Daedalus hovered above the place where the ripples spread, helpless. "Icarus," he whispered. My son, my son." The sea took him, and the light went out. For a long time, Daedalus did not move. The wind carried the feathers away, one by one, until the sky was empty again. The man who had built the labyrinth, who had defied kings and gods, now wept over the very freedom he had given life to. He named the waters below the Icarian Sea, so the world would never forget. And high above, the sun continued to burn, silent and unchanging, watching another dream fall to earth. The fall and the silence of the sea was calm again. The same waves that had once glittered with sunlight now rippled quietly, swallowing all sound and color. Only a few feathers drifted on the surface, pale, fragile, circling endlessly as the current carried them away. Daedalus hovered above the water, his wings trembling in the wind. His shadow wavered upon the waves, broken and uncertain, just as his heart was. There was no trace of his son now. Only the whisper of the tide, the scent of salt, and the echo of a name that would never be answered. "Icarus." The word dissolved into the wind. He descended slowly, his wings aching, his soul hollow. When his feet touched the rocks along the shore, he stumbled, falling to his knees. The feathers scattered around him like ghosts, reminders of a dream that had soared too high and died too soon. Daedalus removed the wings and laid them gently beside him. His hands were burned and blistered from the wax, but he did not feel the pain. He stared out at the horizon, where the sun now dipped low and red, not glorious, not divine, but weary. It looked, for the first time, like it too had lost something precious. Time passed, though Daedalus could not measure it. The days bled together, sunlight, then dusk, then night. The sea, constant and cruel, never ceased its rhythm. He built a small cairn of stones by the shore and carved his son's name upon it with a shard of coral. The letters were uneven, trembling, but it did not matter. No monument could ever capture what had been lost. Each morning he would sit beside it and watch the sea. Sometimes when the wind came from the east, he thought he could still hear laughter in the waves, light and careless, like the sound of Icarus's joy the first time his feet left the earth. Other times there was only silence. The silence frightened him more than the grief. It was not just the absence of sound, it was the stillness of purpose, the weight of guilt pressing down on every breath. He was Daedalus, the genius, the maker of miracles. He had built wings to defy the gods, to escape the chains of kings. But now he saw what his craft had truly created, not freedom, but tragedy. He whispered to himself, what good is a mind that can shape the world if it cannot save what it loves? No answer came, only the sigh of the sea, endless and indifferent. One evening, as the stars began to rise, he lit a small fire by the water's edge. Its reflection shimmered across the surface, fragile against the vast darkness. He spoke aloud, not to anyone, but to the silence itself. "I taught him to fly," he said, "but I never taught him to fall." The flames crackled softly, and he imagined his son beside him again, young, smiling, his eyes full of that uncheckable light. Icarus had always believed that the sky belonged to anyone brave enough to reach for it. Perhaps Daedalus thought he had not been entirely wrong. For in the quiet of that night, something strange began to stir within him. Not hope, exactly, but understanding. The sea did not hate, the sun did not punish. The world simply was. It gave and it took away. It lifted and it let fall. And in that endless rhythm, perhaps there was a kind of mercy, a reminder that even beauty must bow to balance. The next morning, Daedalus gathered the remaining feathers scattered across the shore. He tied them together with thin strands of grass, forming a small reef. When the tide began to rise, he walked into the water until it reached his knees and let the wreath drift away. It floated for a moment, spinning lazily. Then the current took it. As it disappeared, a single gull circled above him, crying out sharply before soaring toward the open sea. Daedalus watched it until it became a white speck against the blue. He turned once more to the horizon. He could not stay here forever. The world still waited, vast and unforgiving, but alive. His heart still beat, though it carried the weight of ashes. Daedalus spread his wings again. The wax repaired, the feathers mended. The wind caught him gently this time, as if even the sky had learned to pity. He rose slowly, not with joy, but with reverence. Below him, the island grew small, the cairn smaller still, until it vanished completely beneath the glimmer of morning light. He did not look back. As he flew, he thought of Icarus not as a boy who had fallen, but as something eternal, a symbol of what it means to reach. Yes, he had fallen, but for a moment he had touched the sun. And that, Daedalus realized, was something even the gods might envy. Some say the sea still holds Icarus, not his body, but his spirit. When the wind shifts and the waves catch the sunlight just right, you can almost see a glimmer, the flash of golden feathers, the shimmer of laughter beneath the tide. Sailors who pass the Icarian Sea speak of sudden gusts of warm wind, rising from nowhere, circling once before fading. They call it the breath of the boy who flew too high. And somewhere in the vastness between sea and sky, perhaps Icarus still flies, not bound by wax or weight, but by memory and myth. Daedalus, in the years that followed, would build again, temples, statues, machines of wonder, but never wings. That part of him was buried beneath the waves, with the sun who had made the sky tremble. Yet in every invention, every spark of human creation that defied the limits of nature, the spirit of Icarus lived on, the eternal hunger to rise, to see, to go beyond what is safe. And so the sea remained silent, but it was not empty. In its depths lay not tragedy, but transformation, a reminder written in light and water, that even in falling, there is flight. That even in loss, there is legacy. That the boy who flew too high taught the world that it could fly at all. The legacy of wings years passed. The world turned, as it always does, forgetting the names of kings and the walls of their palaces. The sea still whispered against the shores of Crete, but the cries of the Minotaur and the roars of its labyrinth had long since faded into silence. Yet one story of a boy and his wings would not be lost. Daedalus, older now, carried that story wherever he went. It lived in his heart like a shadow and a flame, a sorrow that would never heal, and a lesson that would never die. He wandered from island to island, seeking refuge not from others, but from his own memory. Everywhere he went, he built small shrines, delicate sculptures, and strange devices that moved with the wind. Each invention was a prayer, a quiet attempt to speak to the son the gods had taken. But no matter how many wonders he made, the sky always remained just out of reach. One evening, as he stood upon the cliffs of Sicily, Daedalus watched the sun sink once more into the Icarian Sea. Its reflection turned the water to gold, and for a moment it seemed as though the horizon itself had caught fire. He thought of Icarus, of his laughter, his bright eyes, his reckless joy. He was not meant for cages, Daedalus murmured. Nor am I. He knelt beside a stone and drew in the sand the shape of wings, but this time he did not design them for flight. He drew them as a symbol, not of escape, but of spirit. Wings were not merely for leaving the earth. They were for remembering what it means to dream. The years softened his grief, but they did not erase it. Sometimes, in the hush before dawn, Daedalus would wake and swear he heard wings above him, not of birds, but of something lighter, freer, eternal. He would smile then, quietly, because in his heart he understood that Icarus had never truly fallen. A body may fall, but a dream never. It is said that when Daedalus died, the wind carried his final breath out across the sea, and that it mingled with the same air where Icarus once soared. Some say that the gods, moved by the purity of their bond, placed father and son among the stars, one in the shape of a craftsman, the other a faint shimmer beside him, eternally rising toward the light. To this day, sailors who look to the heavens can find them, the constellation of Daedalus and Icarus, two souls forever caught between earth and sky. But the story did not end with them. Centuries passed and men began to build again. Taller towers, greater ships, and machines that roared against the wind. In every age, there were those who remembered Icarus. His name became a whisper, a warning, and a promise. Artists painted him, a boy with golden wings and sunlight on his face. Poets wrote of him, the dreamer who reached too high. Philosophers spoke of him, the symbol of human arrogance and divine punishment. But not all saw it that way. Some saw Icarus not as a fool, but as the first human being to truly try. For while others accepted their chains, he dared to break them. While others gazed upward in fear, he took the leap. And though he fell toward greatness. Even now, when the sun rises and its first rays touch the sea, it is said that the light dances differently upon those waters, softer, golden, like feathers adrift. That is the mark of Icarus, the echo of his flight. His story lives in every heart that yearns for something beyond its reach. When a child looks up at the sky and dreams of becoming more than the world allows, that is Icarus. When a thinker challenges the gods of tradition, daring to ask why not, that is Icarus. When an artist paints, a poet writes, a dreamer leaps, knowing the risk, but leaping anyway, that is Icarus reborn. Daedalus once feared that his invention had destroyed his son, but in truth, it had given him eternity, because the wings were never just feathers and wax. They were love, turned into form. They were hope, given shape. They were the human spirit, fragile, flawed, and unstoppable. And though wax may melt and feathers fall, that spirit endures. Sometimes the gods envy mortals, for while immortality is endless, it is also empty. The gods cannot fail, and therefore they cannot grow. They cannot fall, and therefore they cannot rise. But humans can burn and rebuild. They can crash and still dream again. Perhaps that is why Zeus himself allowed Icarus's name to remain, not as punishment, but as remembrance. The boy who flew too high was never meant to stay among the gods. He was meant to remind humanity of what it costs and what it means to reach. As the legend passed through generations, it became less a warning and more a mirror. Some saw pride in it, others saw beauty, but all saw truth. For every soul that dares to chase the light must accept the shadow that follows. Every ascent carries a fall. Every dream carries danger. But what kind of life is one without the sky? And so, when you look up, when you feel the sun warm your face, or hear the wind whisper past your ears, remember Icarus. Remember the boy who looked at the horizon and refused to believe in limits. Remember the father who built wings from love and loss. Remember that even in falling, there was flight. Because freedom was never meant to be safe. It was meant to be worth it. The waves crash, the wind rises. Somewhere far above, a feather drifts across the sky, weightless, bright, and eternal. And in that moment, the world remembers. The sun may burn, the wax may melt, but the dream always flies.